Alright, what you should see here on the right side of my screen is the ES chart from current futures. Now let me adjust this using our tools. I can switch the levels back to yesterday's action. Hang on one second. Alright, so here's yesterday's levels. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump us into bar replay mode on the ES. So now this bar that you're about to see, this is the beginning of yesterday's action right here up top. We had the big gap up in the morning. Remember that we touched and set the upper pressure threshold. That's this purple line up here. We touched and set this level in the first bar and then tried to push higher and immediately failed. Began to roll over after that. Okay, everybody remembers all that, I'm sure. So what we're going to look at from here is how the trade progressed, and keep in mind that the green bar, the dash green bar that's up here at the top, you can barely see it, it's at the high of the session, extends down to this red line down here, this dashed red line. This is your average daily range target. So when we hit that level, we've traded average daily range for the day. We've also got the value areas here between the light blue lines. That's the shaded area. Obviously gapped well above that in yesterday's action. Now let's take a look at what happened as we headed lower. Note that at this point we are 7 bars into a seeker count. See the green numbers right there? That is the setup phase for the seeker count. And that phase got erased right here on this bar. So at this point we're an hour into a pretty wild morning. Had a lot of fun that morning, and there's no setup phase right now for the seeker at all. So, you know, if we fall into the usual doldrums that we've been seeing lately, we're not even going to get one for the day. Here's the point where the ES broke into the value area and under the pivot. Okay, and then we've got a new seeker count forming. That's the one that you see right here. Okay, and the 2 that's forming underneath that. So what ends up happening? Sorry about that. What you can see from this point forward is as the bar drops, okay, we hit first a static trend line of a 9-bar move up from the prior day. Then we head lower. This is the 7th bar forming on the setup phase, and we're covering the value area at this point in time. Now again, this is a lot of range to have covered, and you can see here we're hitting the lower end of the range. So this is the red dashed line. Okay, so this is average daily range that's traded. Now we haven't seen a lot of average daily range being traded lately. We also got a 9-bar move down on that bar exactly. So there's your setup phase. We commented at this point that we might get a little relief bounce from the market because of the 9-bar setup, because we'd covered the value area, and because we'd covered the average daily range. And you can see there's the next bar. There's your bounce. Okay. Now from there, what ends up playing out? Well, now that you've got the 9-bar setup, you're going to start to get the seeker count. And that's the red numbers that you see. So far we've got a 1 down here. Okay, and if we can get all the way to a 13, you have a potential buy signal, obviously. So we drift back up here and then start to roll over. There's the 2, 3, 4 of the seeker count, the red numbers. Okay, now at this point you're in full swing of the lunchtime doldrums. Still in the value area, and again there's 5 and 6. Remember how the seeker count works. You need to have that 2-bar look back each time, closing below the low of 2 bars back once you're into the red seeker count phase. Here's another one right here, it's 7, and the 8 will come right after that. Now remember, when we get to a 13, conceptually we're going to have a buy signal. There's your 9, 10, and 11. Alright, here's the lower pressure threshold on the ES while we're at it. Okay, so again, if we can get to a 13, we're going to have a potential buy signal. Now, remember, we've already traded average daily range at this point in time. And if we continue to press lower, well, let's just say that it seems unlikely on any given day that you're going to be able to press lower once you've passed average daily range and you get a seeker 13. But keep in mind, one of the things about the seeker tool that's so important is that risk line. And so here's your 13, and we start to get a risk line that's formed, and it's actually, you can barely see it, it's right here, okay? So from the 13 signal, which was this bar, we got a risk line right here that's starting to form. What that risk line is supposed to be is if you bought right here on the 13, you're going to stop out under the risk line. And how often do we see those risk lines become support? A lot, right? But here's the thing. If you break them very quickly, it's a sign of complete, in this case, weakness in the market, and should actually lead to a bigger move. And this is really your big indicator yesterday, was right here, because we're at the lower pressure threshold. And you remember how the upper pressure threshold at the beginning of the day was resistance, right? So here we are at the lower pressure threshold that could become support. We've got this 13 buy signal in place, and we're sitting here already on the risk line. If we break this risk line, you'd want to go short pretty heavy actually in the market. And look how this big bar, the biggest bar of the day practically, except for maybe one, I think it is the biggest bar of the day to be honest, is this break under that risk line there. And from there, we proceed even lower. That was your point. That was really your confirmation of how bad and how weak this market was in the afternoon, when you got the 13 buy signal and then immediately, I mean, you know, it's one thing when you wear off these risk lines over the course of hours, but when that doesn't happen and you break them immediately, they become contrarian signals to the downside in this case. Again, in this case being a downside play in general. So what we're looking at here is not only average daily range, not only good use of the value area, good use of the pressure thresholds. Notice we got the first one in the morning and we got a slight bounce off of the second one here. But that 13 buy signal gets negated so quickly, that's going to lead to extreme weakness right after that. And sure enough, that's how the rest of the day played out. We even went a little lower. Got a new 9-bar setup phase. That's the green 9. Got a little bounce off of that. And then that was it. That's how weak the market was once you saw us break that risk line on the 13 buy signal. That was really your indication of a bad market day.